Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod to talk about Michigan State's upcoming matchup at home against the Duke Blue Devils, Saturday at high noon. If you haven't already done so and appreciate what we're doing, subscribe, rate, leave written reviews and comments. Head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support, where you can join our supporters like Michael Yoakum, who sent us a gift a couple days ago. Thanks a lot, Malcolm. He'd sent it via PayPal, but you can become a monthly supporter as well, either on Patreon or Substack, where you can get an ad-free audio version of the show. All right. So, Rod, this looked like a pretty big game when we looked at the schedule before the season started. And now that we're a couple weeks in, it has become a really big game, as you have a story program, obviously, Duke coming in, but you have now two undefeated, highly ranked teams. Duke's number 4 in the AP polls. Michigan State is number 7. They're both highly rated on the metrics, KenPom or Bartovic, whatever you use. Tickets, I think when I looked, are going for at least $500 a piece, which is pretty crazy for a November basketball game, or I guess it's early December now basketball game. And before the season started, there were 4 big games in the non-conference schedule. We saw Arkansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, now Duke. I think we both would have been pretty satisfied with a split before the season started. I mean, now you obviously have the opportunity to sweep, and I think pretty safely secure, assuming things go by plan, go according to plan through the end of this year into the Big Ten season when it starts in full force in January, really secure a 1 or 2 seed going into the NCAA tournament, assuming, nothing happens dramatically during the Big Ten season.
Well, I understand people's desire to fast forward to that stuff. I can't quite
It's only
get
30 games a day.
Right. Here's as far as I can go. I think Michigan State's done enough already that regardless of the result on Saturday, if they take care of business in the Big Ten, they're going to be in position to, and by take care of business, I mean be a top 2 type team.
Sure.
Maybe even top 3 would do it, to be in contention for a 1 or a 2 seed. I think if you beat Duke, that just further buttresses the argument, But right. I think that they've already done enough that they're in great shape. They put themselves where you want to be, which is in a spot where whatever you do in the league, if you take care of business, you play to the level you expect to, which in Michigan State's case means you're a contender for the title. Right. You're going to be happy with the seed line you get. But yeah, it's, if you want a 1 seed, yeah, it would be helpful to have this 1, because I think this could be, and again, this is also absurdly early, but in a sense, it's not, because so much of this seeding stuff, believe it or not, is already baked in, right, or will be within the next couple weeks. Because once you're in league play, it's sort of the die is cast. That's how you can get SEC teams that were 8-10 in their league or whatever the hell they were, and still get into the tournament, no sweat. Yeah, it's because the strength of the league had already been fixed by virtue of what they did in the non-conference. And though I would not argue that the Big Ten has been as dominant as the SEC was last year, I do think there's a pretty good argument, in fact, a very good argument, that the Big Ten is the best league in the country right now. And that's not entirely, but significantly because of the work that the top 3 teams have done: Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State. So it's a big game. Look, it's always a big game when you're facing Duke, because that's going to give you a fantastic level test. You're going to find out really quickly how good you are at that given point in time. And I think I want to go back to something you said a second ago about, us would have been satisfied coming into the season with a 2-2 split of these 4 big non-conference games. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I think in October we would have said that, but that's because I think we would have assumed that Michigan State would start the season largely the way it always does, which is a little rough around the edges, not as connected as it needs to be, and that they would grow into the season, which is a standard for Tom Izzo teams.
Yeah.
What this team has done is been much more on point early than we're used to seeing. I mean, he has said it. And we all know he's not one to toss around compliments with regard to his own team,
Right.
especially at an early stage. But he's been saying how connected they are. And so I think you got to differentiate those two things. Would we have said that in October and taken 2-2? Yeah, absolutely. Because you expect that the growth is really going to be over January, February, March. But given where they are, you got to be greedy. You have to look at this and say, hey, there's no reason in the world this team can't be 4-0 out of that group of games. When we hit Saturday afternoon about probably 2:10, whenever 2:00, whenever the game ends. So that's where it sits, and that's because Michigan State has done the work to let everybody know, well, they're further ahead of schedule than anybody anticipated. Yeah. It's not just to put a bow on it. It's not a shock to me that Michigan State is playing this well during the season. I mean, I picked them second in the league.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm not surprised by that. I am surprised that it's been happening in November and December.
Yeah, for sure. And I think someone left a comment on what previous shows. Surprised, kind of think that, I was sort of overplaying how well they're going to look, because I thought they had a potential to be a lot better. But I want to be clear, I did not expect them to be this much better, this good, this early. Like, I thought they had a potential to be better than last year's team, but I thought it was going to take much longer than this to sort of figure things out. Because again, to your point, the defense has just been really, really good. And I don't know.
That's the biggest thing.
I'm not sure why that is, but I mean, I think the rebound we expected, although it was a little bit iffy after the exhibition games, but they're just kind of doing everything else. And I don't think either of us were worried about the offense so much. We thought that'd come around. It's sort of, certainly not having a Jace, but the fact that the defense has been so good is really surprising to me, I think.
I agree. And it's easy to say, well, they've got 4 guys with starting experience back in that starting lineup. That's absolutely true.
Sure.
But I've seen Michigan State teams that had similar experience returning not look this sharp defensively this early. I think one thing might be worth keeping in mind is they have 2 exceptional individual defensive players at what I think are the 2 most important spots in the modern game: point guard and the 5.
Yeah.
With Fears and Cooper. Those guys are their 2 best individual defenders. And the fact that those are the 2 guys that are so often involved in pick and roll defense, which is such a heavy percentage of what you're facing on a possession by possession basis in the modern game, that might not be a bad place to start. When you've got those 2 guys defending those plays with that frequency, that's going to give you a nice bump. That's going to put you in very good position. And then lots of other things have to fall into place too. It's not just those 2 guys, but I think if you're looking for a reason why, that might be one place to start, is they are getting the benefit of 2 exceptional players at those spots.
I think you're absolutely right. And because every offensive action seems to begin with a pick and roll. I mean, whatever it might be, just about every set has it, and you're bringing the 5 out.
It's become the default for for those who are younger. It wasn't always that way, but college basketball in general, but especially the college game, I think has evolved to that, or some might argue devolved, but has gotten to that point, has developed to that point where if you don't see a heavy reliance on pick and roll, you're shocked.
Yeah.
Because look at Iowa. Iowa's whole thing is based around running pick and roll with Sturtz to get him opportunities either to score or to create. And that's normal. Yeah. And so if you can defend that play, and it's simplistic to say, well, it's just one thing. No, different teams run it differently. But if you can stop, generally speaking, if you can contain pick and roll by an opponent, it's going to put you legs up on everybody else. And this is one of the main reasons why I have such, and it comes across sometimes, I have such disdain for teams that insist on playing drop coverage. I get it I understand the mindset. I understand the rationale. I understand the math, all of that. But man, I'm telling you, if you want to truly take away an opponent, you can't do it that way.
Yeah,
You
because
just
you're still
can't.
giving them shots and opportunities to
Yeah.
score easily.
You're
Even
giving,
although it's not high percentage shots sometimes of the long twos, but they're still,
but they're still getting
there.
open looks.
Right.
When Michigan State is humming, they don't give up open looks. Which is
Right.
a better way to defend? I'll take the latter.
Yeah. All right. So I think I misspoke. Duke is 9-0 coming into this game because they had just beat Florida the other day just by a point at home. And they also have some other big wins. Obviously, beat Kansas at the Champions Classic, which we attended, although we did not attend that game. We had left. They beat Kansas by 12. They also beat Arkansas on neutral site by 9. And for a team that's ranked number 4 in the country and Duke, you expect them to be good on both ends of the floor, which they are. They're currently ranked 6th on offense, 5th on defense. By comparison, Michigan State is 32nd on offense and 3rd on defense. On offense, Duke is elite from 2. They're 4th in the nation. They're very good offensive rebounding team at 37. Their 3-point efficiency is okay at number 92 at 36%, but it's but they tend to shoot a lot of them, but they're 52nd in the amount of 3 points for field goal attempts. So it means that although they're really good at twos, it's not quite as good as it should be, just because they tend to be shooting more threes than twos by the numbers.
Yeah, that's my read on it. And I got to watch a decent amount of their game against Florida the other night after MSU beat Iowa, and I've seen bits and pieces of other games, and that would be my criticism. It's not a major criticism because it's not like they're a disaster shooting threes,
right?
But they are elite. They're shooting like, I think, between 64 and 65% on twos. I mean, basically 2 of every 3 2-point shots they're taking, they hit. Anything you're doing, in my opinion, to minimize that is a gift to the opposition. Sure. Now, it'd be one thing if we were like, oh, they're a 39% 3-point shooting team too. Okay, then it's, we've seen that over the years with maybe some Purdue teams, for example, where it truly becomes a pick your poison. Right, but they're not quite there yet, as a jump shooting team. And so that would be the one thing. If I were a Duke fan, I would look at, think, maybe if we just tick the 3-point attempts down a little bit, focus a little more on getting the ball into the paint, we'll be even better. They're pretty damn good anyway. I'm nitpicking. I understand that. But that is one thing that I've noticed offensively for them.
And then moving to the other side of the ball on the defense, they've been very, very good, of course. They're number 14th in 3-point defense, number 6 in 2-point defense, which is not surprising when we go through the lineup. 29th in block percentage. There you go. That's why the 2-point defense is so good.
Big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Defensive rebounding, actually not very good for what you'd expect for a team that's offensive rebounding at 37th. They're 103rd in defensive rebounding rate. So if there's a weakness, that's it. They don't tend to foul much. They're 10th in that.
Yeah. Out of every component on both sides of the ball, as you break it down, the defensive rebounding stands out, in my opinion. They're sub 100, which tells you, I think in this case, one thing it tells me is, for as good a rim protection team as they are, they get a little block happy.
Right. You get weak side help and leaves the guy open for the,
I also think they've been maybe a little bit more susceptible to dribble penetration than you want to be, which also tends to be something that leaves offensive rebounding opportunities available for an opponent. But regardless, that's the big problem, and they had that problem against Florida. Now, Florida is a really, really good offensive rebounding team. I mean, make no mistake about that. They're huge, as is Duke. But, in that game, I just wanted to pull it up to refresh my memory as to what Florida did on the offensive boards, because I thought it was pretty impressive. So Florida had 20 offensive rebounds.
Wow.
And now that's only a 48% offensive rebounding clip. They
43 misses or something. Yeah. Right.
Only. But still, 48% is a high number to be giving up. So if I'm John Shire, that is an area of the game, considering what I'm coming up against, in Michigan State, a team that's, well, let's see, Florida is the 5th rated offensive rebounding team in America, and Michigan State is 7th. So I'm basically running up against exactly the same deal.
Yeah, right.
I'd be worried about that
Sure.
if I were John Shire.
And then finally, when it comes to just pace of play, Duke is a team that plays very fast. They're 20th in average length of offensive possession, so they don't hang on to the ball very long. And on defense, they're 362nd. So it means they really slow down. I mean, that's like about as slow as you can get. I think whether 365.
It's crazy.
Teams.
You don't ever see a dichotomy like this. I glanced at it at first and saw their overall pace number was like in the 240s. And I'm like, But then I looked at it and said, oh, okay. That's a great stat, actually, if you're a Duke fan, because here's what that tells you. It tells you that you're playing fast, and they're obviously very efficient in doing so.
Right.
We know that with all the numbers we've looked through. But to be number 3, I think there are 363 Division I teams, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty close to, yeah.
They're right there. They're forcing teams to take about as long with the ball as anybody in the country at any level of D1. That means they're playing solid defense. They're forcing people to use a lot of time to break them down. And honestly, when you look at who they played Florida. Florida's not a team that wants to be slow. Arkansas certainly isn't.
Right.
And, Kansas maybe a little bit more, but not, nevertheless, this is really impressive. So that number tells you they're doing, even with the tiny flaw that we're talking about, it's not tiny, but the flaw that we're talking about in defensive rebounding, this is a team that's playing very, very well at both ends.
Sure. And as most things in life, you can't be great at everything. You're usually going to have, there's a trade-off, or there's some point that you're going to be worse. And probably, as you mentioned, there's probably a reflection because of the block percentage. It puts you out of position on the weak side for defensive rebounding, things like that. So, that's maybe why they're not quite as good. So this is, Michigan State does not have a great record against Duke in the past. They did beat them in Cameron, although that was the COVID year where there were no fans. They just had, I think they even had like cardboard cutouts or something. It was really, those are weird times. And then it turned out Duke wasn't good that year. So that win didn't mean quite as much, because I think we were all excited about that win. And then it
came early enough that,
and you
were fooled by it. Yes.
You're fooled. A little bit like North Carolina last year, beating North Carolina overtime. Turns out North Carolina not as good, but it definitely helped propel Michigan State forward. But anyway,
Yes.
That's beside the point. The last notable victory over Duke was, of course, in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four in Washington, D.C. Against Zion Williamson. So Michigan State, Tom Izzo's had some success against Duke, but generally Duke's had the upper hand and has in this. And I feel like with this, when they've played like the Champions Classic, where I don't think they've lost to Michigan State early in the season, because Michigan State's defense is not as crisp and connected, they tend to have struggle against the Duke team. So maybe this year will be different in that extent.
Yeah. If memory serves me, I think this is the 3rd time Duke has played at Breslin, and the first 2 did not go well.
Yeah, I remember the last one was really bad with Cassius.
Well, they both were, because the first one was the game where they wore the silver uniforms and have never worn them since.
Hopefully they burned.
The second one was Cassius's senior year, where MSU was really struggling at that point in the season, and right. Duke came in and blitzed them. So it hasn't been good in the 2 meetings previously at Breslin. And generally, Duke during the Coach K era obviously took care of business, for the most part. For the most part, handled Michigan State. But this is a new era. And I think that John Shire faced MSU in the Champions Classic 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think that was his first season. Yeah.
That's right. So he's 1-0 himself, but that none of that matters. This is all different guys, different situation. And look, Duke's a very good team. There's no getting around that. But if you're Michigan State, based on the body of work to date, and you're at home, you got no reason to come into this thing nervous about anything. Go play your game, see what happens.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's get in and talk about the lineup for Duke, brought to you by the Brothers Just Two Gutters. Friends, these guys will get out there in the ladders right now in this kind of weather. They'll clean things out. And even if things are a little bit frozen, they'll get things working again. They can repair those gutters or do whatever needs to be done to get them operating properly. Because, I know if there's Duke fans watching, you're just kind of laughing about the snow and ice around here, but it is important to make sure that those gutters are functioning properly. So, and then have the other guys who are experts at it get up and down the ladders, and you stay off of them. So go to our support page at tffinots.com/support. And there, Greg or Kurt can take care of you, whether you're on the east or the west side of the state. You get 10% off. You just mentioned Final Four when you get your estimate. Those guys will take care of you. They take care of my house, Rod's house. They do fantastic work, great pricing, even without the discount. So get a hold of them today. You'll be glad you did. They sponsor, of course, the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter, who will keep you in suspense. We're not going to tell you until we're done here, going through the players. Starting with Caleb Foster, 6'5", junior, averaging 8.9 points a game, 3.4 rebounds a game. Also to go along with 3 assists per game, shooting 48, 45, and 58.
Yeah, he's been a very efficient player, as those numbers would suggest, but he's nominally the point guard, but he's only second on the team in assists. So they don't function. Frequently we've seen Duke have elite point guard play
right
in the past. I would not say we've got that now. The one thing that does give you a little bit of pause for concern with Foster is his size. And this is the 4th biggest team. I think their top 5
North Carolina was the 4th biggest.
Size.
So maybe this is,
they're huge. And it starts, it starts with the point guard at 6'5". And we've talked about this before. That's something that concern is way too strong, but there are times where Jeremy Fears is playing good defense, but still gets got by an opponent who just has a size advantage. That's the one thing that he can't counter is a guy who's got, 4 or 5 inches on him, as we do see here. But as I said, I think the fair way to characterize Foster is he's having a good season. He does a lot of things well for them. He's not the level of impact guy, at least to date, that we're used to seeing from Duke point guards. We think about just in recent years, the Jones brothers, guys like that.
Yeah.
Go back, Kyrie Irving, Jay Williams. I mean, on and on and on. It's not that.
And at the 2, continue with their large size. We've got a 6'6" sophomore, Isaiah Evans. He's averaging 12.6 points a game, which is second on the team, shooting 40, 32, and 88. And of note, in the Florida game, he missed his first 7 threes, but then hit the game winner in the last possession.
And, that shows you the confidence that he has in himself.
Right. Yeah.
That performance has dragged down the overall number, but make no mistake, Evans is a dangerous shooter. So he's a guy MSU will have to account for. Like a couple of other guys on this team, Duke was so talented last year. Just an incredible. There are people that will tell you, remember, they got beat in the national semifinal by Houston. But if you looked at places like Torvik or like Ken Pom, they were the most efficient team in the entirety of Ken Pom's history, which goes back, I think, 26 years.
Wow.
It tells you something about how good that team was, even though they didn't win it. So they've had some guys and lost, obviously, a lot of players. Cooper Flagg, number 1 among them, but not the only one. But they've had a couple of guys who were freshmen on that team and were more role players step up into bigger roles. And Evans is the most prominent of those. He's the second leading scorer. So he's a big figure for them.
Then we have Nick Kamenia, a 6'8" freshman from LA. I assume that's Los Angeles and not the Lansing area.
That's right.
He got his first start against Florida. He's averaging 6.2 points a game and 3.9 rebounds a game, shooting 48, 39, and a measly 57% from the line.
Yeah, not necessarily a superstar freshman like we're used to Duke having, but a very good recruit. And he's obviously fit in well, making some nice contributions, especially as a perimeter shooter with good size at 6'8". So you see, I mean, this is 6'5", 6'6", 6'8". Michigan State's probably going to run 6'1", 6'4", 6'6".
Yeah.
Against them. So this is a big team.
And then we come to Cameron Boozer, 6'9", 250-pound freshman, one of the twins on the team, front runner for National Player of the Year, which is, I feel like Duke always has at least one player who's in contention for National Player of the Year, which is why it's such a big deal when you play them. He's averaging a little under 24 points a game, a little under 10 rebounds a game, leads the team in assists, steals, second in blocks, shooting 56, 38, and 77, averaging also 7 free throw attempts a game. So he's very active inside, takes a lot of threes, about 4.5 a game. And so anyway, he's pretty good.
Very possible he's the best individual player MSU faces this season, which would stand to reason if he ends up National Player of the Year, right?
Right, yeah, sure.
But there are other contenders for that. You know, Michigan State's going to see Braden Smith too. They're going to see Yaks later in the season.
I was waiting for that.
So they're going to get some other good individuals, but I think it's very possible that Boozer ends up being the best. You look at it, and you look at the numbers, and you watch them play. He impacts every area of the game. I mean, everything. He's doing well for them. You can't say that in an overall sense he's shown any real weaknesses. Maybe sometimes he falls in love with the three a little bit too much, but he's 38% from out there. It's not as if he can't hit. It's just, I think he's so good in the paint that it gets back to what I was saying at the outset. It almost feels to me like anytime you've got him taking a jumper, that's kind of a win for the defense versus what could be happening.
Right.
But again, I'm nitpicking.
Sure. And I feel like when Michigan State took on Zion Williamson back in the Elite Eight, the regional finals, he started taking a lot of threes. Now, he was not the shooter that Boozer is.
Not quite as good. He wasn't
and
bad.
That was definitely a win when you had him shooting, because going inside, he was like, you're getting destroyed.
And this is different. I mean, Boozer's not that kind of explosive athlete, but and in fact, if you want to compare him to the Wilson kid that we just saw at North Carolina, who was another guy who's been exceptional.
Right.
One difference there is Wilson is a much more explosive athlete. Like those couple of moves he had in that game where you just shook your head like there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Boozer's incapable of making you say that as well, but you're less likely to see it. He's not the athlete Wilson is. He's not as explosive. I think he's more polished. I think he's a little stronger, but he's not bad athletically. He's just not that other level explosive.
Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting actually when those teams take each other on. You got Wilson and Boozer kind of playing opposite each other.
Those will be much watch games because there's a very good chance they would guard each other, I would think.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So finally at the 5, we have Patrick Ngangba, 6'11", 250-pound sophomore. He's gotten a bigger role this season, obviously, averaging 11.3 points a game, 6.3 rebounds a game, shooting 67, 29, and 77, and about 1.5 blocks a game.
Yeah. Another guy, a sophomore, who was a role player last year, but has stepped into a leading role and has done very well. He's forming an excellent tandem in the post with Boozer. Again, another guy, it's not like he takes a ton of threes, but when you're hitting 2/3 of your twos, any 3-point shots you're taking are, I think, of benefit to the defense. And so, but again, it's not been a huge problem because he doesn't take a lot of them. But around the rim, man, he's lethal at both ends.
And they'll move on to the reserves, beginning with Dame Sarr, 200-pound, 6'8" freshman from Italy, played at Barcelona. He's started the first 8 games of the season. Now he came off the bench last game against Florida. Anyway, he's averaging a little under 7 points a game, almost 4 rebounds a game, shooting 44, 35, and 50.
Yeah, those numbers aren't bad, but there was a lot of hype around Sarr that, oh, he's a lottery pick level talent. And he has not played to anywhere close to that kind of discussion as of yet. Hence, he's been moved out of the starting lineup. Now, I don't know whether that will continue on Saturday. I'm assuming for our purposes that it will, since the most recent data tells us it will. But he's going to play a lot regardless. Again, hasn't been bad, and a guy who is good athletically, has great size, and also has some ball skills. On paper, that adds up to a very difficult cover. Wouldn't be a shocker if he sometime soon puts it all together and just has a great individual game. We're hoping it won't be on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. And obviously, even though he's not starting, we still expect to see plenty of minutes from him on the floor.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Then we'll go to Malik Brown, 6'9", 225-pound senior. Started at Syracuse, came in last year. Averages a little under 6 points a game, almost 4 rebounds a game, plays about 17 minutes, shooting 75, 14, and 57. So his offensive game, at least from outside, is not why he's on the floor.
Right. And he's fine. When they've got him in there, it's not as if the offense goes away, but his primary impact is as a defensive specialist. In fact, if you watch the Florida game, Florida had a chance at a miracle finish. I think it was 2.5 to play, had to go the length of the court, but they had a chance. Duke, I believe, missed a free throw.
Yeah.
And they had a chance to try to win it. And Brown was on the inbounder and he deflected the inbound pass. So just one moment among many where he showed his value on the defensive end. But he gives them a comfort level because they know in the event of foul trouble or just when they need to give one of those starters a blow, that's a guy who comes in and does it's very much like a Tom Izzo would feel. You got a guy is going to come in who's experienced, tough, defends at a high level, and he's going to hold the fort down.
Yeah. All right, then we have the other Boozer, Caden Boozer, 6'4" freshman. He's a twin who is not blessed with as much height as his older brother. He's averaging 6 points a game on 47, 39, and 77, 2 assists per game, a little under 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And this kind of reminds me a little bit of the Murray twins at Iowa for a little bit. You had the one who was outstanding, who was the quick, obvious choice after his sophomore year going to the NBA. But his younger brother wasn't the same player, but he ended up there too. Just needed a little bit of time to develop.
I like the second Murray brother much better than I like Caden Boozer. I'm not a Caden Boozer fan, and it goes back to high school. I saw he was on the same team with Jace Richardson. And because Caden Boozer had been there before, Jace came in before his senior year. And probably because he had the big reputation, Jace did not have that huge reputation just yet. Caden was more frequently than not the point guard. And watching them play, I never had a shadow of a doubt that Jace Richardson was a far better choice to run an offense. I'm not surprised that his assist to turnover ratio is under 2-to-1. Because I didn't feel when I've watched him play, and this is going to sound harsh, and it probably is because his numbers are actually pretty good thus far this season. Not high on volume, but he's been efficient for the most part. But I just always got the sense he was selfish. Like his bigger brother is the real thing. Like that kid, if he wants to take 25 shots in a game, okay. He's that good. Caden's not that.
Yeah.
I'm not. In fact, I don't know this for sure. I won't be surprised if recruits over him is a little strong because I would imagine he would still play a big role next year. But it won't surprise me if Duke ends up with someone else actually being the primary guy on the ball.
Sure.
I'm not a believer. He's fine in the role he's in for this team. Totally fine. I'm not a believer in him as a future star. I don't see it.
And then finally we have Darren Harris, a 6'5" sophomore, averaging 5.1 points a game on 43, 40, and 71 shooting. Most of his shots are from behind the arc. Does play a decent amount, 13 minutes a game.
Yeah, 80% of his shots have come from three. So that's what you're getting. But if you look at this, just to emphasize the size, 9 guys in their rotation. The shortest is Caden Boozer at 6'4".
Yeah, right.
Michigan State will play. No, it's fair. Michigan State will only play 2 guys who are smaller than that. Divine and Jeremy, of course.
Yeah.
But Michigan State is a big team. They're I think they're 18th in average height, but they're not Duke. Duke's really big.
Yeah. All right. So this is, on the last game, my wife also had a suggestion for the player that Michigan State needed to keep in the gutter. She also had a suggestion for this one after watching Duke play Arkansas a couple weeks ago.
Caden Boozer.
She thinks actually Cameron Boozer is the one that should be the one.
Not Caden?
No, not Caden.
Sure?
Actually, Cameron is. Okay. I don't know. What do you think about that? Is that a good?
Yeah, obvious. I mean, we might not have a more obvious choice all year.
Yeah.
I may have said that before.
Well, like last game, but yeah,
I think I said it before the Iowa game. You're right.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, yeah, it's Cameron Boozer. I mean, the guy has been everything he was billed to be and a little bit more. I actually will say, I knew he was going to be very good. I expected him to be good. He has been better than I thought. He's been more efficient than I thought he would be. And again, I didn't expect him to be inefficient. It's just
right.
What he's doing as a freshman is crazy. And he's been tested. They played a schedule every bit as challenging as the one Michigan State has played at the high ends, for sure. Yeah. And yet he's doing this. I mean, yeah, really impressive. Duke's had some great freshmen over the years, but I don't know if he's a better, I don't think he's probably a better long-term NBA prospect than Cooper Flagg, because I think Cooper Flagg is a better athlete. But in terms of what he's actually doing on the court, you'd be hard-pressed to say he's not having a better season so far, at least, than what Cooper Flagg had last year. And that's remarkable.
Yeah. All right. So who cleans the glass best? Brought to you by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. I just was sitting down with Troy early this week, and I was somewhat shocked to find that they clean windows throughout the entire year. That includes when the snow's out there and everything else. So, and also the pricing is a little bit better in the winter. So get a hold of Troy and his team, and they can take care of your windows. They can power wash your house, which I can only imagine what that's like this time of year. You can get a hold of them at our support page at tffinots.com/support. They can take care of interior, exterior windows. They can take care of any of you. If you're anywhere within a spitting distance of Grand Rapids, that means you can be out in Muskegon, the Lakeshore a little bit. They've even helped out and taken care of the windows of the state capitol. So contact the Swedish Squad. Great pricing, great guys. They're the nicest people. And again, you get a 15% off just by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate from Troy and his team, which of course you can do at our support page. And you get great pricing even without that discount. So they should be your first place to go. So you have the advantage right now. You're up 4-3. And I get to pick first this time in our snake draft. I'm obviously going to go with Kohler because you'd be insane not to go with Jackson.
Yeah, no, I've got a challenge. Cooper is obvious, my first choice, but you got stunned by taking Cam Ward. We didn't know he was going to sit that game out. All the indications are that he's going to play.
Oh, really? I was wondering if he's going to be out. So
no, all the indications are that he's going to play. That even Izzo had said it was more or less precautionary, which is interesting that you hold him on. It goes to show you that they're not making that decision based on the importance of the game, because Iowa was very important. Yeah. But, just to make sure that Cam is okay. So I would say it's fair to expect him to play, but I am running a risk if I take him. Now, I happen to think if he plays and he plays his normal role, normal minutes, etc., he's a very important part of this game, because with the guys Duke's going to run out there, you need numbers. You need all 4 of the post guys playing and ready to go. And Cam, especially just because of the physicality he brings and the ability to finish against a team that's done a good job of protecting the rim. I'm going to go with Cam. I'm going to take the risk, and we'll see what happens. If he doesn't play, I'm dead in the water.
Well, like it was last game. And And
Right.
honestly, oftentimes you are anyway without Jackson. But
Yeah,
you
but
know,
I mean, but I'm really if
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Coop
There's no
and that's the
chance.
only guy I've got, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, I'll go with Carr because it just makes the most sense from I think, as far as minutes and things. I mean, even if Ward doesn't play and McCullough's out there, something, and again, maybe it doesn't matter as much. I just need somebody to pick up about 3 or 4 rebounds, and I should be should be enough usually.
Yeah.
So we'll go with Jackson. All right, that brings us to our 5 keys of the game, brought to you by Nudge Printing. Head on over to nudgeprinting.com where you can get fantastic Spartan apparel. You can also go to nudgeprinting.com/win, and you can enter for a free drawing for the North Face Gruff Sparty backpack. Value of almost $100. Just by entering your email address, you can get entered in the free drawing. We have a drawing every month now. Gabe's giving away some really awesome stuff. So head on over there. Again, costs you nothing. And also, Nudge Printing provides all our gifts and prizes for contests like the Beat Rod contest. We had more people enter than ever before, so it's going to be fun for me to score that at the end of the year. So, of course, the prizes there are Nudge Printing as well as gift cards for our bracket challenge, which will also be at the end of the year, clearly with the NCAA tournament. So head on over to nudgeprinting.com. Great stuff. And you get 20% off for just mentioning TIFNOTS. That's TFFINOTS. Type that into the coupon code at checkout. Sorry if you're a Duke fan. There are no Duke products there, but you can get all kinds of Michigan State stuff. So the first key of the game is boards. Obviously, Michigan State, we kind of just highlighted in the pregame there that Michigan State, really good offensive rebounding team, just as Florida was. Duke is not as solid on the defensive end. And Michigan State, you're going to have to find ways to get to score. And in some ways, their best offense against Iowa was actually off their offensive rebounding.
Yeah, look, you're talking about 2 high-level defensive teams that, at least over the course of the season, have done a great job at turning opponents into inefficient offensive teams, right?
Right.
So if we assume that holds up to one extent or another, both ways, then what you can do on the shots you miss as a rebounding group would seem to be very important. It's not that Duke can't rebound offensively. They're 37th, so they're pretty good.
Yeah.
But Michigan State's top 20 defensive rebounding team. And thus far, I think only Arkansas among the high-level teams was able to get much done as an offensive rebounding group against Michigan State. Michigan State's faced some pretty good, Carolina was a pretty good offensive rebounding team. Michigan State limited them. Kentucky, same thing. So I think MSU is going to be okay there. The one thing you would look at and say advantage MSU would be its elite offensive rebounding against Duke's far less than that defensive rebounding. I think any equation for Michigan State victory probably includes, or at least likely equation, probably includes significant damage on the offensive boards.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second key to the game is very much like the player needs to be kept in the gutter is Boozer, great talent, National Player of the Year candidate. And he is, like you said, he does everything and affects everything that goes on with Duke on both the offensive and defensive end.
Yeah. And look, he just got done playing a Florida team that some people think has the best all around front court in the game. And has some guys similar to players like Coop and Ward in that they have length, but can also move. And he put 29 on them. So, and did it pretty efficiently. So he's capable of, you're not going to stop him. We know that. Right. You're just not going to stop him. So what's the key? We say this a lot during the year when you're talking about the opposition's best player, particularly when it's a high level team. The goal is not to stop him, but to make him less efficient than he normally is. And so that's the task. That's the goal, I think, that Michigan State has to reach is how can you turn him into, an 8 for 20 shooter from the floor?
Yeah.
How can you do that? Michigan State's got the kind of guys who you would think have a chance. If anybody has a chance, I would be floored if Carson Cooper's not guarding him initially. That's a concern, of course, because Boozer can draw fouls. He plays with physicality,
Right.
And so Carson's got to defend without fouling, something he struggled a little bit with lately. We saw that in the Carolina game, right?
Yeah.
But we've also got Cam Ward. That's
Well,
another
hopefully,
card,
yeah,
assuming
right.
he plays.
Yeah.
That's another card you've got to play against Boozer. And, a guy who's a similar size. I mean, Boozer's got a little bit of weight on him, but they're the same height. Cam might even have a little bit of an edge athletically. But Michigan State's got pieces. You could even put Cohen on him in a pinch. Cohen could certainly handle that from a physical point of view. So Michigan State's got options. One thing that I think would be to their benefit, and kind of keep an eye on this if you're watching. I did a little bit of research and came across something that others have noted. And again, we are nitpicking here, but Boozer is far less efficient with his offhand, which is his left hand. Now, that's not unusual. Most players are probably less efficient with their offhand, but I think that's something to watch for. Michigan State is generally such a good scouting team that if I'm aware of that weakness, you could be damn sure they are. And it'll be interesting to see if they're able to find ways to force him more frequently. And when I'm talking about finishing, I'm talking about finishing at the rim. If they can force him to have to finish with his left hand more than he wants to, that could be a good way to hold down his efficiency. You're not going to do that for 40 minutes, but can you do it often enough that it makes an impact?
Right. Yeah, I was actually trying to figure out if it seems like a lot of these twins are mirror twins. One's a lefty and one's a righty. I was wondering if Caden was a lefty, but I'm
not sure.
Yeah, sorry. All right, so the third key to the game is strong with the ball. Duke is not someone who generates a lot of turnovers, although just talking about them forcing the tempo so slow, I'm guessing they get a couple shot clock violations as well. But Michigan State had some trouble, especially Cooper handling the ball and sort of putting it down near the floor where people could poke it away, and also him dribbling a little bit more than he had to, which I put a little bit on Coop, but I also think that was probably some of the guards not coming around and bailing him out in time, which is also part of the problem.
Yeah, this is not a Coach K style defensive team. And K even varied his approach over the years, depending upon the rosters he had. But when I think about, and I would guess a lot of our listeners fall into the same boat, when you think about Duke under K, they were a team that frequently on defense, they weren't a gambling team. They didn't pressure, full court trapping, pressure, any of that. But boy, they got a lot of work done playing passing lanes. Yeah. And when I think back in specific to those two games at Breslin, the two previous times Duke has visited Breslin, I have a lot of bad memories of that. Live ball turnovers. And so that's not this Duke team, really. But you just have those thoughts. And coming off a game against Iowa where Michigan State, it wasn't an abject disaster, but it wasn't great the way they handled the slapping and whatever Duke is or isn't stylistically, and they're not a team that looks to force turnovers, but is it going to be surprising if you maybe see a little more of an attempt at that in this game? No, it won't be, not to me. So I just want to see Michigan State be strong with the ball, stronger than they were against Iowa. They've been pretty good in that department this season. They need to be better than they were the last time out, because you don't want to give this team easy ones.
Sure. So the fourth key of the game is the foul line, and this is one where Michigan State was not shooting a lot of free throws the last couple of games, and then last game against Iowa, they were 22 of 25. So not only were they getting there, but they were really hitting at a good clip too. So now I think they're low 70% as a team, which is
74.
74, so mid 70s. So really climbed up a lot considering where they were, second or third game of the season, where I think they were low 60s.
Yep. That was inevitable. I mean, I would have been absolutely shocked.
Yeah, right.
That number had stayed low. So here's the thing. Again, in a game you expect to be very competitive, very tightly played. Something like free throws, big area of potential swing between two teams. Iowa was a team that did not foul very much, and
Right.
Michigan State forced them into a lot of fouls. Duke's not Iowa. Don't get me wrong. They're a much different team physically. They're a different team athletically. They're a different team talent-wise. Across the board, they're different. But they do share that similar trait with Iowa. They don't commit a lot of fouls. They're 10th in defensive foul rate, which is outstanding. Really outstanding considering how good they've been overall defensively.
Right.
That they also don't commit fouls. Can Michigan State force them into committing more than they normally do? If they can, that's a big positive for MSU.
And this brings us to the fifth key to the game, jump shooting, which I think is a little bit related to that. Michigan State has not been a great jump shooting team. They have been in some games. They've certainly the Kentucky game and North Carolina, they were very good, but they're not shooting a ton. And so, it's one of those things where you probably need to shoot well, but you also don't want to just be heaving a bunch of threes too. Like if they're shooting 25 threes this game, if they can't get any penetration, that I think does not spell good things, especially with your offense. It's a lot harder offensive rebound, I think, long threes than it is if you're crashing inside.
Yeah, that's true. MSU, I think, even after not shooting it well against Iowa, was still at like 33.3%.
Yeah, right.
From three. So they're squarely in the middle nationally. Generally, 33% is your demarcation point between, good and bad. So if you're right at 33, you're a thoroughly average jump shooting team. And that's what they are. But as we've talked about, that doesn't mean they go out and they hit 7 out of 21 every night.
Right.
It's feast or famine. In 2 of Michigan State's 3 big wins, non-conference, they've been blistering from 3. North Carolina and Kentucky, they were outstanding in both games, and they shot a high volume of threes in both games. I am with you, however, and I think I've verbalized that here. I don't think it's to this team's advantage to be putting up regularly like 22 to 28 or beyond numbers of threes in a game. I don't think that's when they're at their best. But it probably isn't an accident that Michigan State winning those games against Carolina and Kentucky by the margins they did, blowouts.
Right.
Probably the threes played a role in that. When they shot the 3 miserably against Arkansas, only made 1 the whole game, they still won.
Yeah.
But it was a tight game. It was a 3-point game. So in a game like this, against a defense that's proven to be elite in defending twos, they block a lot of shots, they do all those things. Is it going to make things much easier for you if you're able to hit at least a decent clip of threes? Yes. I don't think they've got to be 40% plus. I would take honestly, I would probably take a 33% effort. As long as the volume wasn't crazy. If they were something like, 6 for 18, I could live with that. But I think it's going to be really tough if they have an Arkansas-like effort.
Right. Yeah, you're playing one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
The advantage you have is, of course, you're at home. And so that should make things better.
Well, it hasn't with 3-point
saying that
shooting,
they've actually not been shooting well at home.
Right. The best games they've had, they've been 40% plus from 3 in 3 times this year. And I believe 2 of the 3 have come on neutral floors. So yeah, they need to find the shooting touch at Breslin.
And I think you said it before, like last year, they just had 2 40+% shooting.
Yeah, they're already ahead of that
in a game for a season. And now they've already had 3 this year. So this team's on track to shoot much better. Although
I don't think there's any doubt about that. They've already shown that they have a propensity to, in individual games at least, get hot in a way that last year's team just never did.
Right. So in summary, this is a game that I know a lot of Spartan fans, as soon as the North Carolina game was completed, everyone started talking about Duke. And I say everyone, I mean, when I on the message board, and kind of discounting Iowa as, they can't wait to the Duke game and blah, blah, blah. And I was much more concerned about the Iowa game because although the Duke game is a big game, don't get me wrong, it wasn't as big as your Big Ten opener, which is a game, we want Michigan State to
Agreed.
obviously win the
Yeah.
Big Ten. And so that's a bigger prize in some respects than beating Duke. Of course, it'd be great to beat Duke and at home and sort of exercise some demons for previous visits to the Breslin Center by Duke. But so this is obviously, that game's gone. So now this is obviously the biggest game on the schedule. And as we said, there's a lot riding on potentially for NCAA seeding and obviously momentum. I mean, you could certainly lose it, but it would be nice to get this and continue the winning ways up until the Big Ten season starts, because next game is at Penn State. And then it's just a couple, I wouldn't say tomato cans, but some are tomato cans.
Yeah, the rest of the December schedule from here is, and we say this knowing that you can get got anywhere and you got to bring focus and all that, but it's relatively forgiving, especially no comparison with what they've been through for the last, 3 weeks and change.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you go back to the Arkansas game,
right?
So. Yeah, it matters for all those reasons. It matters in terms of having another really nice, because that's the thing with say Kentucky. I'm pretty convinced that Arkansas and North Carolina are going to have good seasons. Kentucky, I'm less convinced right now.
Me as well.
But be that as it may, those are going to hold up as good wins. 2 of the 3 for sure. And I guess I'd still be surprised if Kentucky wasn't at least a tournament team. So those all matter. But getting one more, and look, what I would be shocked by is if Duke isn't the ACC champion and pretty much a top 5 team, top 5-ish team all year long. They're not as good as they were a year ago in terms of talent. They're just not. But that doesn't mean they're not really, really good. That was an exceptional group they had last year. And so it's not a knock on this team to say, well, they're not quite at that level. They're still really good. And if you get this one, that is a meaningful win for March purposes for Michigan State. And as you say, for momentum, the way you feel about yourself, all of that. On the other hand, if you lose this game, I think that can have value in terms of, Izzo likes to use the fat and sassy, likes to trot that out.
Yep.
Boy, it would sure arrest that in a hurry if you lost. And, either way it goes, you're going to learn more about yourself. You've already learned a lot by virtue of the kinds of teams you've played, but this is another test. And I would argue maybe another level of test in some ways than what they've seen to date. So it's a really great opportunity. It's, and I hate to even be having to say this, but you have to remind people this sometimes. Either way it goes, you win it, it doesn't mean you've won anything of note. You lose it, it doesn't mean the sky is falling. You know, that's the beauty of college basketball is you can play these games and it doesn't have the same overarching holistic meaning. It's a data point in time that has value, but that's all it is in terms of its ultimate meaning. The ultimate meaning part doesn't happen until you get late in the season.
Right, exactly.
So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what MSU was able to do. It's going to be, you mentioned the ticket prices. I think that the crowd in the building that night is going to be off the charts.
Yeah.
That was the case the last 2 times Duke came in, though.
It was off the charts for about 5 minutes.
Right.
And then
so that's the thing.
Yeah, right.
That's the thing. I didn't mention as a key, but I do think and again, it's not even so much about these 2 teams as it is just the history of what you've seen in this matchup. You really want Michigan State to get off to a solid start. That's one thing we haven't really even spent any time talking about.
They keep winning, so you're not focusing on things. Yeah, right.
They have been getting off to, and I don't mean the first minute, but say 5 minutes into the game, they've been getting off to really solid starts. Mm-hmm. Not that they've been running away and hiding from people necessarily, but you had that feeling, and I'm sure most people listening know what I'm talking about. You're watching a game and it's just a struggle from the get-go, and the other team, it's 6-0, 8-0, 10-1. you start to feel yourself kind of sinking a little bit. Michigan State hasn't had to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know, they've had teams like Iowa did or Kentucky did where maybe they get out 5-0, but the Michigan State responds very quickly. By the time you hit the first media timeout, you've settled into the game. You feel like, all right, they're into this. And that's been a problem in some other seasons where lately, as I recall, kind of anecdotally recall, where Michigan State's gone through some stretches where they just really struggled. I think last year, even at times, I can remember
quite a few times last year. Yeah.
Oregon at home was one for sure, where the whole first half was just a struggle. And then they came out and took care of business in the second half. And there were other examples of it too. This team so far has not had that problem, but I do think that'll matter tomorrow. You're playing arguably the biggest name in the sport in Duke.
Yeah.
There's something that goes along with that, and from a confidence point of view, and it's as much the crowd as it is the team, but that matters because that reflects back on the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important to not have Duke go on a huge run early. You want to get in it, get off to a good start, start feeling good about yourselves, settle into the game, and then it plays from there, and what happens.
Right. Well, and it's a game at home, so you should, this is a game that statistically you're projected to win because although Duke is very good, I think, home court's worth like 6-7 points. And so you should win this game. And so, we'll see. I think it's very important whether Ward plays or not, because I think that extra body in the interior is going to be really important. Not that Jesse McCullough.
I don't have much doubt.
Okay.
The way they were talking, I just don't have much doubt. Tom Izzo's not one to downplay injuries and their length.
Yeah.
He
right.
said the words, it was precautionary. So I just don't, I'd be shocked if we don't see Cam Ward. Now, how effective is Cam Ward? Might he run a risk of aggravating it? That's all very possible. But it should be noted that on KenPom, which is a pretty good proxy for Vegas, I haven't seen Vegas lines yet, but Michigan State is a 1-point favorite.
Yeah.
On KenPom.
I think Bartovic has him as a 1.5 point favorite.
Right. And that's about what I would expect the Vegas line to be, like 1.5.
Yeah. And that actually brings me to the last thing I wanted to mention is, and I think I mentioned this maybe the last game too, which was totally moot because it wasn't a close game, but Michigan State has not really played in a close game. Yes, the Arkansas game was a possession or two bit, but it never, it wasn't like the game that Duke just had with Florida, for instance, where it's, late clock and there's timeouts and there's, what you do, you got to hit the front end of 1-1 in order to secure the victory, those sorts of things. And so they haven't been through that. It's entirely possible that this happens this game. And, that's one of those where you could say, honestly, however it turns out, it's a good learning experience because you'll certainly run into that a couple of times in the Big Ten. So,
more than a couple. Yeah.
Well,
I agree. I agree with that. And it is true. We have not seen Michigan State facing that kind of game pressure. On the flip side, Duke's only faced it once.
Yeah.
The only time they've dealt with it was against Florida, and they were at home.
Right.
So they had the benefit of, and frankly, Florida blew that game. Florida made a couple of really bad plays late to lose it. But, you're right. Duke's been through it at least once. Michigan State has not as of yet. So if it is a tight game, the way we kind of expect it to be, that will be to MSU's benefit just going through it, regardless of the outcome. But boy, you want to get it. You want to win this.
Yeah, there's no reason to think that you can't at this point. I mean, they've beaten everybody else, and it's not like Duke is very good, but they're not a super team where you feel like there's no way you can match up against them. This Michigan State's team has shown that they can hang with anybody. Well, and actually they've been pretty much easily beating about everybody. So you'd hope they could match that against Duke this Saturday. I'll be there enjoying my ice cream sandwich. I will admit to you, I was tempted for a little bit that I could pay for my season tickets just by selling my my tickets for the game. But then, of course, that's why you have the season tickets, so you can have games like this. Right. I was looking forward to this game before the season started. We actually made some changes to our schedule in order to make sure we could make the game. And anyway, so it should be a fun time, and I certainly hope so. that it's a good time. And
they don't look, these kind of games don't come around every season. I mean,
No,
we've been really lucky that Michigan State's got 2 of them this year in Arkansas and Duke at
right.
Breslin.
Yeah,
that's a rarity. That's
For
a rarity. I
non-conference,
think it's going to become more common as we go. I think you're seeing more of it this year. We've talked about that before, but I'm with you. You can't. This is why you buy the season tickets in the first place. It's also worth noting that of the other marquee teams, I think Illinois comes into Michigan State, right?
They do. Yep.
Okay. So you'll get Illinois and Michigan at Breslin. You won't get Purdue.
No, UCLA and USC.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying,
not this year, not marquee teams. I'm talking about
no. You're right.
In
Big Ten,
4
those
or
are
5 opponents
in Indiana.
where
which
you
may or may not be.
They're not. They're not. They got beat by Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that's probably
they're not.
Yeah, right.
Exposed. Same way Iowa was.
My son was hate watching, by the way. He's very excited watching.
They were totally exposed. It's the same. It's the same deal as Iowa. I don't mean that they can't get to the tournament.
Yeah.
I just mean if you're thinking that baby Indiana's a sleeper contender, nope. Same deal as Iowa. They've got a decent amount of offensively skilled players, but it's a mid-major roster physically.
Yeah.
And Minnesota's not a good team. They just lost their point guard, the kid from Detroit King, Chancey Wills, for the season. So they're playing without him, and they still took it to Indiana. They just crushed them on the glass, way more physical. Yeah, Indiana's not going to be a marquee game. But you know my point here.
Yes.
You only get a few of these, and this is clearly one of them.
Yeah.
And it's bigger than you would have thought in October.
Oh,
because you didn't think Michigan State
ago
was necessarily going to come in as a top 10 team.
That both teams come in undefeated. You have a number 4, number 7 in the country. Yeah.
Duke, you would have thought, might have slipped up against one of these teams they played and have beaten.
Yep.
So it's, the stakes are higher. The level has been better than I think anybody would have anticipated from both teams.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. So, of course, make sure you join us live. We'll be here on X and YouTube, on Instagram. I think those are all the channels we're on. We'll be here live after the game, which means we'll say 3:30 or 4 o'clock, probably. It's taken me a little bit longer because my seats moved. And so I'm a little bit farther from the parking lot. And so it takes me a little bit longer to get home because I get tied up in the traffic a little bit more. So anyway, we'll be here live after the game to talk about that. Please come by and join us. If not, you can catch us on the audio version, of course, or anytime after then. So until next time, the Final Four is not on the schedule. Go Green.